Okay, calling to order the regular meeting of the City Council of Palos Verdes Estates this evening at 6:33 p.m. on October 8th, 2024. Please rise and join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember McGowan.
Here.
Councilmember Roos.
Here.
Councilmember Kemps, absent. Mayor Pro Tem Lozey.
Here.
And Mayor Murdoch.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, moving on to approval of the agenda. Are there any changes anybody wants to make? And if not, could I please have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, Mayor's report. A couple of items I want to report out on. First is, many of you probably are aware that the city did reach a settlement agreement on the Bay Boys, Spencer, whatever name people attach to that claim. You know, this case started in 2016 and has consumed significant amounts of city time and legal fees. And rather than continue with the cycle of trials and appeals that has been going on, the city arrived at a mutually agreeable settlement with the plaintiffs. As part of that, the city will need to make some modest improvements to the Nonada Bay bluffs, including some rock seats, a couple signs deterring people from using the goat path and steering them to the south trail, a trial on the brain, a drinking fountain, kind of really more clearly delineating the walking path on the top of the bluff there. And the judge still needs to determine what the city needs to pay regarding legal fees for the plaintiffs, somewhere between $1 and $4 million. That'll probably be resolved in the next 6 to 9 months is what we're guessing. If you want more details on this, it is available on the city website, and you can learn about that. The second item here is around fire safety. So about 2 months ago, there was a very small brush fire in Valmonte. The fire department determined that the cause was private vegetation. Some overgrown shrubs and bamboo had grown up into the electric wires and sparked a little fire. I do want to remind residents to please properly maintain your private vegetation, especially if it is in close proximity to electrical wires. It is your responsibility to maintain that vegetation and keep the city safe. It's not SoCal Edison's responsibility. It's private property, it's private vegetation. If you see that a neighbor's vegetation is potentially posing a risk or giving some concerns, you know, speak out. You can contact the city will investigate. So please be vigilant, and as Chief always says, I guess Valerie says it too, if you see something, say something. So that's fire safety. Did you know that every Friday, it's street sweeping day? The city contract with Athens includes street sweeping, which not only keeps our streets looking good, but reduces trash and debris from the gutters being swept into the storm drains and the surrounding oceans, and it also removes brake dust and other harmful airborne particles, which helps improve or protect air quality. The commercial areas and the aerial roads are done weekly, so every Friday they're being swept, and the remaining roads are swept on a rotating basis. For example, I live in Upper Nonada Bay, so my streets are done in I won't make the comment. Keep going, Dawn. My streets are done on the first week of the Friday of the first Friday of the month, and in Valmonte, it's the fourth Friday of the month. There's a map showing which Friday of the month your street will be swept. It's on the city website under Services/Public Works. You're going to have to kind of scroll down a bit on the page to find it, to see where in your area is being swept, but there's also a lot of useful information on that page, so you can read as you scroll. I do encourage residents to learn which day their street is being swept and to do your bit to help. Which includes moving your cars if you can, keeping them off the street. The street sweeper can't sweep if there's a car there. The other issue is trimming your vegetation so it's not spilling over the curb because they can't sweep there either. But, we can all do our bit to help keep our city clean as well as the surrounding bodies of water where stormwater empties into. City Manager, do you have a report for us, sir?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. I have a couple items. I'm going to ask in a minute our City Engineer, Steve Lariso, to update the council and the community on some work that's going to take place. But I'm going to talk about two other things. On Monday is Indigenous Peoples Day. City Hall will be closed to the public. The phones will be off, but staff will be working. And we will use that as time to maybe go through those piles on our desk and maybe try and get ahead. And I don't know if you all noticed, but the ghouls are out and the pumpkins and hay bales have arrived at our city entrances. So I don't know how they mysteriously got there, but I suspect that the foundation might have something to do with it. So we're getting into the Halloween spirit. All right, you're up. Try and follow that.
Tamika, would you be able to bring up that, that one image there, please? Yes, that one right there. Mayor, members of the council, this is in regards to work that was approved about a month ago by the council for Geosyntec to do some additional investigation behind City Hall here, basically the resistivity of the groundwater. And the reason why I'm bringing this up right now is because of the fact that there's going to be closures that are going to be needed for Tejon Place as well as Via Corta. This work will begin the week of October 21st. So we will be putting, we'll be working with the city's marketing team, I think that's correct, Trepepi Smith, to get advance notice out, and we'll be working with the PD to make sure we get letters delivered to all the businesses. Also bringing this up is because on Tejon Place, there'll be closures for 3 days during the daytime. So city staff will be needing to park at the auxiliary lot as well as possibly over Memorial Park. There may not be enough spaces in Malaga Cove parking, so that's where we're suggesting Memorial Park. Additionally, the businesses will only be able to have people walking into Tejon Place over those day 2, day 3, and then day 4, as you see up in there. On day 4, where it's working on D prime on Via Corta, that will be in the parking lane. However, the in and out traffic coming out of Malaga Cove will be restricted. We'll have more information with the letter that goes out, as well as being published on the city's website and social media campaigns.
Will there be, some of those electronic signs out and about in advance, so people kind of know days in advance that this is happening, or what?
We can
How are
add that
people
out.
going to know?
Yeah, we can add that out too.
We're going to, yes to that, and we're going to hand deliver, working with our police department, notices to all the affected businesses over there, and we'll put out no parking signs ahead of time, so we'll do our best to get the word out.
All right, is that it for the city manager and crew?
All I have.
How about you, chief?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Mayor and honorable city council members. So I'm excited to announce a pilot program that we actually have already started in the police department. With the help of Sergeant Venegas, we have implemented this program to have our part-time police service aides conduct enforcement for municipal code violations. So this could include things such as gas leaf blowers, leash law violations, illegal signs that are up, and business license infractions. So this will allow our officers to focus on higher priorities, including traffic safety concerns and criminal activity. So far, one of our PSAs, Valerie Quintana, has completed a week-long post-approved course regarding this type of enforcement. She also went on a ride-along with another non-sworn member of the Manhattan Beach Police Department who does the same type of enforcement to learn how other departments are conducting their enforcement. If all goes as planned, she will be proactively enforcing these sections, along with responding to calls or complaints about such violations, and I do expect that it will increase the quality of life for the community in Palos Verdes Estates. There is no fiscal impact to this program. The hourly wage stays the same, and the training is within our allocated budget. And the second update, or more maybe as a reminder, but I am wearing my pink patches tonight. This is meant to spark conversations about breast cancer awareness, since October is a month for that. If the public or anybody would like to purchase these patches, they are available in our police department for $10 each, and the proceeds will be going to assist homicide detective Jackie Sipake, who is currently battling breast cancer, and she works for the Inglewood Police Department. This is all the finances is being handled through the Palos Verdes Police Officers Association, and there's no city funds that are involved. And the Palos Verdes Police Officers Association is also going to be matching the funds or the donations up to $500. And that concludes my update.
Great, thank you. Both of those, awesome, and thank you so much to you and your crew, your staff, for putting in this pilot program. I think it's going to benefit everyone. I think the PSAs are going to get a lot out of it, and I think our residents are going to get a lot out of it, so I appreciate the initiative shown.
Thank you very much.
Communications from the public. Let's start with Valerie. Valerie Gorsuch.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, City staff, and residents, I'm Valerie Gorsuch. I'm the president of Palos Verdes Estates Neighborhood Watch and the area coordinator for Malaga Cove. Please save for our upcoming annual meeting scheduled for Sunday, November 17th at 1 p.m. right here in City Council chambers. We're very honored to have our city manager and our chief of police be our speakers that night, and they are going to tell us whatever we need to know about what is happening in our city. The meetings are short, they're informative, and there will be a question and answer period following. And we'll be having our raffle with prizes provided by local merchants and people who just want to give us some good stuff to give to you. And visit our Neighborhood Watch table at the Expo on October 27th. It's up at Penn High School from 10 a.m. till 1 p.m., and there'll be lots of helpful information from lots of organizations, and we will have a gift to come to our table for any visitor that comes to see us. Our website has many resources on how to make your home and property safe. We're updating the content all the time, and there are tips for climate safety, emergency preparedness, and dates of our PVE Neighborhood Watch events. Visit our website at pvenw.org. And we need volunteers. We've been an organization in this city for over 40 years. We do have volunteers who are interested in crime prevention and make up our team of board members and block captains. But as we get ready for the holidays, we're looking forward for volunteers for fun events in November and December. And if you're a local student and you need to have hours of community service, we're very happy to have you help us out, and we will definitely sign that form that you need for school. If you want to get involved and you don't have our newsletter, please email us at pvenwboard, that's Palos Verdes Estates Neighborhood Watch, that's what that stands for, board@gmail.com. And by this time, you should have maybe received your ballot. I remind you, whatever you do, please vote by November 5th. That's important for all of us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Craig Quinn. And next will be Joan Davidson.
Good evening, Mayor Murdoch, council members, staff, and neighbors. My name is Craig Quinn, and as you may know, I'm running for City Council. The purpose of my visit here is to acknowledge Councilman Jim Roos. I know that Jim's going to be moving on, and I will be traveling, and so I won't have an opportunity to acknowledge you publicly other than right now. I want to thank you for your service for the city and wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thanks so much, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Joan Davidson. After that, it will be Lucy Padilla.
Hi. I also wanted to come tonight to thank Jim for his service. I will be talking about you later, I'm sure, in the next meeting, Jim, but thank you. We're all very sad, to be honest. I came tonight to go down memory lane with Desiree Myers. In 2017 and 2018, Des campaigned against the PVE the police safety tax, the result of which we lost $5 million. We've never been able to recoup, ever. So we've been struggling ever since. City manager, lawyer Guglielmo at the time had to tell people that Ms. Myers impersonated a City Hall employee to gain access to city records, financial records. Des wrote on Nextdoor, "Here's an email from the sheriffs provided to the council that states how they provide so much faster emergency time, response time than PVE police. They provide more patrols than PVE, and they're patrolling out of Malaga Cove," none of which is true. Des likes to talk about our high pension costs when every city has the same issue, including school districts. And the only way to stop this is through a state referendum, so we're stuck. Des sued her neighbor on Via Montemor for about 22 or 23 years, costing our city money as well as the PVHA. And I am just befuddled why Des didn't answer at the forum at La Venta Inn whether she voted yes or no on Measure D and E. Obviously, she voted no, but she wouldn't answer. We got a word salad. Former Chief Dreiling put on Nextdoor, "This is the most untrue pre-election propaganda. Des's campaign slogan ought to be any means to an end." In a letter to Desiree, Tony Best, former police chief, wrote to Des's question, and he said, "No, Des, I've never trusted you." So when you go to vote on November 5th, please vote for the candidates being endorsed by the PV Police POA, Greg Quinn, and Derek Lazaro, because I will be too. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucy?
Hi, thank you for having me, and Honorable Mayor and City Council. I have a background in human resources, have been in HR for over 17 years, haven't had a chance to meet your new city manager, Carrie Kelman, but I also have briefly done work here in 2019, and I've noticed some things. I know you're well-versed in budgets, so that's not even a question, but I've also noticed that you've had turnover, I think, in all your leadership departments, and that's something that I'm not sure that for you might be worth investing, or if you're doing a reorg, but I'm sure you are well aware of the cost of high turnover, and every city has, I'm sure, some sort of deficit, and that's something that every city grapples with, and I'm sure the city manager is really, has a lot of things that he's juggling. So that is just something that I've noticed, and if it warrants anything, I just wanted to comment on that. I'm sure that you have a lot of planning to do, so that was all. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last of my cards here. Was there anybody else who wanted to comment? I should have stated at the beginning of this is for items not on the agenda. You'll have an opportunity to speak on agenda items later in the evening as we go through them. All right. Consent agenda. We have 8 items on the consent agenda. Number 1, approval of warrants. 2, receive and file financial statements for the period ending August 31, 2024. 3, city council meeting actions. 4, Parkland Committee meeting actions. 5, 2025 PV Tennis Club budget. 6, consideration of a second amendment of professional services agreement with Trepepi Smith and Associates to provide communication services. 7, adopting a resolution to authorize submittal of applications for Measure A funds and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement. And number 8, a special event application of the Lenata Bay Homeowners Association to hold its Harvest Festival at Lenata Bay Park on October 27, 2024. Sir, Mr. City Attorney.
Madam Mayor, there's a change to the staff recommendation on item 4, and that is that items 1 and 4 on the September 12th, 2024 Parkland Committee meeting, that consideration of the council be continued to a date uncertain for those items. There is clarification that is going to be needed from the Parklands Committee about those items. It will be brought back on a consent item for them and then reported to the council at a future time.
So to clarify, you're saying that if council leaves this item on the consent agenda and we approve it, that we are just approving right now items number 2 and 3?
That's correct. I believe there's only 4 items on. Items 1 and 4, there would be no action. That would be the staff recommended action and the approval on consent.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, does anybody need to pull anything? If not, oh, let me just ask that question first. Anybody need to pull anything? Okay. Are there any, I didn't receive any public oh, wait, I did. I do have public comment on that item that the city attorney was just speaking about, so I'm not sure who. I have Sally and Kirby Larson. Are you both speaking? Is one of you speaking? What's the plan here? Yeah, go ahead and come up to the microphone.
Good evening, Mayor Murdoch and City Council. Can we have some explanation regarding why you're pulling the number 1, which would be the street trees that were authorized to be removed on Epping Road?
We were told that that was on, we received approval from the Parklands Committee, and we were told that it was on the agenda tonight to get your approval, and that no indication that something was being pulled, and why is it being pulled?
Would you like me to answer that, Madam Mayor?
Yes, one of you.
I'm happy to. What happened at that meeting, it was a technicality when the motion was read and approved by the Parklands Committee. Conditions of approval weren't specifically read into the record. So upon reviewing that, there were some items related to this removal that weren't added. So staff is not going to be recommending any change. That we just need to go back to the Parklands, get the Parklands concurrence to add on the conditions, the standard conditions of approval.
It's
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's the, it'll come back on consent. It won't be another hearing at the Parklands Committee. We brought it back consent just to clarify that the intent of the Parklands Committee was to approve it with those standard conditions of approval.
Are we, can we be privy to what the standards, the conditions of approval are?
They were in the staff report for the September 12th meeting attached there.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So there's going to be no more discussion tonight about that? There'll be another meeting that we'll come to?
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I still have 2 minutes. Can I say one thing?
Please.
I did not know, we did not know that Jim Roos was going to be leaving, and we're feeling a little fortunate to be here tonight so that we can at least say publicly, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all
Thank you,
that you've
Jim.
done in the course of your job here, Planning Commission before this, and you're going to be missed. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ruth McFarlane. She's also about item number 4.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm sorry, I'm a little confused as to specifically which item on the Parklands list is actually being withdrawn. I read the agenda and it doesn't actually helpfully identify. I have a particular interest in the application relating to the Peruvian pepper trees in front of 2100 Paseo del Mar. So my question is, can I respond to that tonight, or is that one of the items which is being sent back to the Parklands Committee for whatever?
That is one of the items, but you can still speak this evening if you would like.
And then if it goes back to Parklands, whatever they adjust would come again to council.
Yes.
Again, so I could come again.
You could.
Very
You
exciting.
can come every night.
You get 2 bites at the cherry. I like that. Okay, can I clarify how much time do I have?
You have 2 minutes left.
2 minutes left. I'm Ruth McFarlane. I live at 1909 Via Visalia. My interest in this application at Paseo del Mar is I would like to ask you to think about the context of Paseo del Mar as a whole, the whole street. It is not a street with a great number of trees. It is not richly endowed with trees. And therefore, if I ask you to be particularly thoughtful and particularly judicious in approving the removal of several trees in one location, because there are not very many trees, city trees, on Paseo del Mar, if you remove so many in one space, it has a relatively greater impact, aesthetically, environmentally, all of the kinds of things which you have heard about 1,000 times and which the Parklands Committee has taken care of. So I ask you, when you look at this application, which is to remove 4 of existing 6 trees, it reminds me that sometimes people talk about you use a hammer to crack a nut. Here, I think of a Sherman tank going through and stripping it. My concern with removing so many at once is that, in fact, you contribute to denuding irreversibly Paseo del Mar. It worries me considerably. This is for the benefit of a homeowner. I understand, I appreciate his interest, but he is not the only person. The rest of the community is also part and are persons involved. So I ask you, when you refer it back to the Parklands Committee, I ask you to have them, if they choose, to recommend to you and you approve the removal of the trees, that they be replaced in situ by trees which are more appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Monique Thorington.
Good evening, and thank you all, first of all, for the labor and the time that you put into running our city and making sure it's safe and beautiful. Last time I was here, it was, you just had abuse and it just, so hopefully that will change, and just thank you for your service. We have become concerned recently, not recently, upset and alarmed at seeing a pattern of petitions submitted by a few residents to accommodate their desire for views. A fact that does not seem to be taken into account is that the trees and natural vegetation in question, we're speaking about the pepper trees that Ruth mentioned, for example, those trees are not on private property. They are city trees, and later on, I don't know if this is part of the thing, there's also a brush that's been proposed to be severely trimmed. Anyway, my point is there are city trees and vegetation on city land to be enjoyed by all residents and not to be compromised to accommodate the whims of a homeowner for whatever reason would like them removed. It's not their call, it's not their trees, it doesn't belong to them, it belongs to the city. These pepper trees in questions are actually designated street trees. They were planted by the city at city expense, and they are thriving. They look wonderful, and you pass by and you see the yellow ribbons, which mean it's just really distressing. And the question arises, why on earth should they be removed? Why would you remove thriving city designated trees? For what reason? Especially as those homes have this unimpeded ocean. It boggles me. Anyway, that's besides the point. But the same, I'm not sure if it is the same issue to be discussed here. There's natural brush in front of a house along Paseo del Mar that has bluffs across it. And then the natural bushes and vegetation are on the edge of the cliffs, which goes all along Paseo del Mar. It's part of the natural vegetation. And that house, the petitioner, the house is on the market, so it makes you wonder, why would he want the brush severely trimmed? And it doesn't make sense. Anyway, this vegetation, it's part of the natural brush. It protects the cliffs from erosion. It's the habitat for birds and rabbits, and that bluff is one of the natural places that we haven't, as humans, tinkered with and manicured.
Thank you, Monique. I'm afraid your 3 minutes is up, but thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
All righty. Any other public comment on agenda items 1 through 8? I think you already spoke. City Attorney, can somebody come back a second time and speak on the same item?
No,
Well, we're not hearing that item, so.
It's at the discretion of the mayor, but it's, that's, no one's entitled to an extra time after they've used their time already. So it's up to you if you want to make an exception, but the rules are that each person gets one opportunity. You don't get to come back and forth.
So next, we're not ruling on that tonight, so if you could save those comments, and then when it comes back to council, you can share them with us. All right, thank you. Anyone else on items 1 through 8 that I had referenced? Okay, if not, do I have a motion on the 8 items? And once again, reading into correction for the record, that on item number 4, the Parkland Committee meeting actions, this vote or motion is only with respect to items number 2 and 3, which are the natural habitat at the golf club and the lemonade berry bushes along the bluffs on Paseo del Mar.
So moved.
All right, so
I'll second.
Okay, so I have moved by Councilmember Roos, seconded by Councilmember McGowan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Item number 9, this is, technology freeze here. Anyway, this is about the landscape maintenance amendment number 2. Is there a staff report for this?
Yes, City Engineer Steve Lariso will be making that report.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. This staff report is for amendment number 2 with the landscape maintenance contract with Bennett. The primary objective of this amendment is to reduce the contract from approximately $1.5 million to $1.4 million, and that was accomplished through the reducing area frequencies and overlap of areas that are being done with the fire safety weed abatement contract. There was also removal of areas that were private areas and areas that were deemed part of the concession, and there was addition of areas as well that were removed from the fire safety weed abatement program and areas that were added after field reviews determined that it was needed to do this. This amendment number 2, if approved, will also change the contract to extend through the end of year, basically the end of 2025, with 2 one-year extensions that would see the beginning of a CPI in year 3. We also have Sean Bennett here in the audience. If you do have any questions, happy to answer any we could.
Thank you. Can you just clarify the term? So the way that we had the current contract reads is there are one-year extension opportunities, and each of those comes back to council. Are you seeing with the 2 one-year extensions, are those approved? Do they come back to council for approval, or are they approved by the city manager? That wasn't clear to me in the document.
The way we have it worded right now is that it was by the city manager, but that's as you are giving authority, if that can be revoked.
Okay.
And the intent of that was strictly just because we're setting in place what's happening now. We've been through almost the first year of work, so just trying to keep it rolling. That's all it was for.
So as written right now, it would be a 3-year it would be an opportunity, it would be 3 years that the city manager would just...
What you're authorizing with amendment number 2 is to go into the second year,
Right.
which would be beginning January 1st, and then also at the direction or at the approval of city manager for years 3 and 4.
Okay.
One at a time, though.
With the COLA.
With a COLA.
And one other piece of clarification, in the staff report, we drafted it with the recommendation to, after tonight, with the concurrence of the council, to allow the city manager and the city attorney to finalize the fine pieces of the agreement at the end. On the advice of the city attorney, and thank you for that advice, he's recommending that tonight, wherever we end up tonight, bring it back on consent at a future meeting. Hopefully in 2 weeks, we can iron out those last pieces, whatever comes up tonight. Really, the overall intent of this is a very large contract. This is a very important contract in the city. Although I wasn't here for a year ago when all of this was put in place, we have established a working relationship with Bennett. They've been on board for close to a year. We've had probably more wins than losses, and we want to continue to work with that company on the city's landscaping. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish tonight.
Okay, thank you. So I've got a few questions. I'm going to go ahead and launch us off here. I do appreciate everyone's efforts on this. This is anyone who's looked at this contract, it's an extremely complicated contract with a lot of pieces, a lot of different frequencies, there are a lot of moving parts. And so I do thank everyone for their work. I kind of hope that at some point we're going to get to a simpler contract and kind of a management of this. We've got some good work done here, but I don't think we're quite there. So I've got my first 3 questions, Sean, are for you. So if you would please step up to the podium, that would be great.
Good evening, Mayor.
Hi, it's good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you, too. Fine, thank you.
All right. So when you started this contract, you came to council last January, and with high hopes and good expectations, and told us that you thought that you would be able to reduce the cost of the contract. And from what I can see of what's come to us tonight, the biggest reduction is in the frequency of path maintenance, which was something that council had brought up. And so my question is, what's keeping us from achieving the reductions that you had envisioned back in January? What's getting in our way?
Well, there was a little holdup on chemical applications. That would have helped us if we could have seen that, so we could have forecast better into this contract. We weren't really, we were handcuffed for the last 6 to 8 months on this. We're in our 40th week managing the contract, and you're right, it is very complex, and it takes a couple of people in our office to manage it. We've also had to implement a software that would help with the scheduling, because it does have so many different frequencies. But we have not faltered one bit. We went toe-to-toe to the merits of the contract and executed everything on time. We have not fallen behind on the schedule once in 40 weeks. We've been right on schedule, performed the service, billed the service, and we had some hiccups along the way. There was no question about that. But when you hired a new city manager and things are on the up and up now. We're having better communication over the last couple meetings on the phone. Things have gone quite well. In this contract, there is also some use of the facilities over here for storage, which will help us be more efficient and be more timely too. We want to see, private enterprise brings to the public efficiencies. Private enterprise finds ways to make it profitable, because that's the only way they stay in business. We can't give you an excuse, well, we couldn't get to it that day, or sorry, the guys didn't show up. We have to find solutions to meet the obligations of the contract. We have done that, even though we've been handcuffed in a lot of different ways. We've done it, and it's a challenge, but I have some good people behind me and good staff, and we bought a huge amount of equipment to bring on board so we could meet it straight on. We didn't have any delays in meeting that obligation when we started. We hit the ground running.
So is your sense that the only option for us to reduce the contract is to allow, I don't know what descriptor I want to put here, but to allow pretty broad usage of chemicals? Are there other things that we are able to do?
We use chemicals very minimally in a contract that has this many acres and this many types of vegetation. So it would help if it's strategically done, not to be handcuffed, so we can do it. And then ultimately, if we could forecast that, then we could help you on the budget. I also said to the Public Works Director at that time, we would reduce green waste because we'd be able to address things quicker and not wait. So even though some locations have frequencies that aren't weekly, some are 6 times a year or sometimes 4. Those if the frequencies go longer, you get more debris because it's just that way. Things grow between frequencies.
So are you telling me that if during this past year, if there hadn't been issues around having to report out or say when you were going to use herbicides and do traffic control and all that, if you had actually been able to use them the way you wanted to, this contract coming to us today would be less than it is?
Very possibly, yes.
Okay.
Very possibly.
Okay. My other question is, the contract includes gopher control.
That's correct.
And I look around the PV Drive West median and other city open space, and I see mound after mound after mound. I see it on the flat surface. I see it spilling over the curbs, so now Athens won't sweep the streets there. It looks like polka dot paper. There are sections of where I live by PV Drive West where it's like every foot there's another mound. So what are you doing to address the gopher problem? It's part of the contract, it's part of the unit price, but as a resident, I'm not seeing any improvements. I see new mounds every day, so how do we address this gopher issue, and what can you do to be compliant with the contract?
Well, I have to say that as we started this contract, weeds were extremely high and they were out of control, and there was a lot of deferred maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
When you get an infestation, it takes a while to get things under control. It's a chemical-free in that regard. They won't allow us to use restricted chemicals, and there is a gas that's available for open spaces such as those, but it isn't acceptable. The other methods are very slow in reacting, and that's probably why it's taking us a long time to get it under control.
Well, so what I'm hearing from you is you have only so many tools that you can apply, and they're not very effective. I'm trying to figure out what are we going to do to control the gopher problem, and I'm not really, unless I'm mishearing, I didn't really hear an answer. I heard
we use CO2.
This isn't effective.
CO2 is used, and it's piped down into the holes. We try to find active tunnels, and that's how that's done. We go from hole to hole of trying to find the pest that's creating those mounds. And a lot of those mounds, you have to find the most current one, because you can pipe it in, but if it's not an active one, it's a hit and miss.
So if we have, and I'm just going to speak about the PV Drive West medians, because those are the ones that I walk on a regular basis. So if those get maintained every 2 months from a kind of weed control standpoint, is that when the gopher control's happening, and is that an effective way? I mean, if it's every 2 months, I don't know what the gestation period of gophers is, you know, how often they're multiplying, but do we need to maybe, is there a different approach we should be taking regarding the gophers?
What we've done is treat them when we see them. When we're working there, after a mow is the easiest time to locate the most active ones, and that's when we go out and treat, when we see the active holes.
So Steve, what percentage of the contract is the gopher work?
It's not a percentage, it's built into the unit cost, so it's supposed to, anytime they maintain someplace, they're also supposed to be.
So it's not an addition, that's what I was looking for.
No,
the
it's
unit co-
not.
It's not an additional unit cost? So the unit cost of a parcel includes the.
Gopher and
okay.
DG work.
Okay. Well, same concept, is that if we're not getting the gopher work, then the unit cost should go down.
Exactly. Okay, and then my other question, keeping with the theme of PV Drive West, is...
You're going to keep with the theme of gophers.
No, I think
We're moving on from
I'm
gophers.
moving on. I'll leave that one for Jim if he wants to continue it. So I'm interested in your thoughts on whether we are doing, whether way we structured the work for the PV Drive West medians is optimal for controlling it, for staffing it, and all of that. You know, I see mostly weed whackers are being used, and it's a pretty flat area. You talked about buying a lot of equipment. I'm curious why, you know, it doesn't seem like mowers are being used, or, you know, I'm not the expert, but it's just interesting to me. Are weed whackers the best tool for us to be using for this? It's pretty labor intensive.
It depends what the issue or the locations are. Those are used for tighter areas typically.
Okay. So my other question is, the medians get maintained every two months, which seems to be maybe not quite frequent enough January through June, and seems too frequent July through December, right? So, you know, September, October, November, there's not really a lot growing up in the medians. Is there, this goes back to the question of, is there a better way for us to structure the work so that, you know, it's more even workflow or something? You know, there was a crew out, I don't know, a week or two ago, and, you know, they were out there, but it just didn't seem like there weren't any weeds for them to do. And so as we think about how to continue to evolve and simplify and create value in the contract, you know, you don't have to have the answer now, but I pose the question of, is there a better way to handle how we're doing these medians, which, you know, city spends you spend a significant amount of resources, and we spend a significant amount of resources on. So I won't make you answer that, but I just want to put that out there because, okay. That was my 3 questions for you.
Well, I look forward to working with Public Works to answering any of your in-depth questions if we can outline them and I can delve into them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Steve, this question's for you. It's something that we talked about before the meeting, but I think it would be helpful for everyone to hear about. So back in May, Council had a lengthy discussion about the responsibility of maintaining the right-of-ways, and we had discussed the importance of consistency in our service with respect to residents and not maintaining some and while maintaining others. And council had provided direction to return with some options about what do we do about that. And, you know, I think like 11 right-of-ways had been identified. I know one has been pulled out because it's, you know, the golf club's concession agreement says
Correct.
they need to do it. I see that those right-of-ways are still in this contract. What is staff's plan with respect to kind of resolving this question that has been around for a while?
So there's a couple questions in there, I think, not just one, but I'm gonna take one at a time.
Okay.
So the areas of the right-of-way that you were talking about, yes, we've identified those areas. We have provided them to Bennett Landscaping, and the intent is that we may identify areas over time that we may need to end up reducing. Areas are not correct. I mean, we did analyze this again, but we will continue working with the contractor to make sure that all the information is correct. So that's the first part. The second part is going back to the initial part, was requesting information to be brought back to council by staff. And there was 3 requests that were made back in May, was to come back to council with an amendment to the code because the code currently states that landscaping areas that are adjacent to properties shall be maintained by the property owners. And so the question by council at that point was, do we bring in an amendment back to the contract to take those out, or to have the residents do them themselves? And I'm sorry, I have my notes here and I lost that all of a sudden. I had the 3 items on there. Staff to come back with options, make a change to the code, which this is in particular 12.16.060. I know it's a number, it's just something that sticks in my head. Adopt a policy to do what to do with those locations, and the other one would be to make a change to the landscape contract to determine whether or not those areas will be kept in or not.
So is there a timeline for when you plan to come back to council with options for how we should be dealing with this inconsistency in our practice and code?
Well, to answer some of the information there was the cost was, to do that work was about $35,000 within the contract. Adopting a policy, we could come back and discuss if council would like to have a policy that would implement the requirement, or basically implementing the code itself, but then there would be the code issues, code compliance, and working with the residents. And then we could also provide a letter that would go out to basically the residents to remind them of their responsibilities.
Okay, so I think when we were talking in the back, we talked about that potentially coming back to us at the next council meeting, kind of what the options are.
Yeah, we
I mean,
can
the
bring.
policy's really only needed if we decide that we're going to keep the existing code and decide to not follow it.
Correct.
Okay. Harry, did you want to weigh in?
I do, and I just, given the state of our Public Works Department right now, I'm going to give Steve an out right now. Sorry, Mayor. Can you do that in 2 weeks? Or would you like to do that in 4 weeks?
You said 2 weeks.
That was in there.
Oh, that was in
Now
there, but out
I'm
here it's
watching this guy
different.
bounce around and yell numbers at you.
I was just using your number.
No, I know, that's why I'm asking.
And you add to that all the competing priorities that he's being asked to deal with.
I appreciate that. I'm just asking for resolution of something that we'd
Yeah.
opened 5 months ago.
I would prefer it, yeah.
A month?
Yeah, I would prefer it to be not this next meeting.
Okay.
And it would just be the discussion of these 3 items, specifically for that. It doesn't necessarily change what's going on with the contract at this point, but at least to present the information.
Okay.
So right now, the right-of-ways they're in the contract, correct?
Yes.
With the exception of the golf course.
Correct, which I see they fixed that.
Okay. So keeping with the right-of-ways, one of the things I noticed in the contract is a number of the right-of-ways, we changed the frequency from 3 times a week to 2 times a week. 3 times a year to 2 times a year. And the total cost, so we decreased frequency and the total cost went up 2.2%. So I guess what I'm wondering is, why would the city agree to a reduction in service for a higher cost? Why wouldn't we just keep the frequency what it was at the old pricing?
The reduction in frequency was due to eliminating a portion that was being done by FSWA, or the Fire Safety Weed Abatement Program. During the negotiations of the revision to areas, because there was less work, it's the cost benefit of doing only 2 times a year versus the 3 times. That's where the numbers came from. What we also did, though, was when we were working the amendment out with Bennett, the rates that we had identified were basically what was in the original contract. And those rates were identified to be too low by the contractor. They came back with revised rates, and we ended up negotiating basically to be meeting halfway in between for the square footage costs for all those revisions.
So we had a contract with a vendor that was for 1 year with the potential for, I think it was 6 one-year
Yes.
extensions. And that contract stated no price change for the first 3 years.
Correct.
And so in year 2, we're changing the prices?
On the areas that we changed frequencies.
So couldn't we just go back to the 3 times a year and get better service for the same, actually 2% less cost?
Essentially, yes.
Okay. I'd like to understand, so the path maintenance schedule. There were a lot of changes here, so thank you guys for wrestling with that. We've got a lot of paths. They get used different frequencies. They're in different locations. They're in different states. So I appreciate that. So many of the paths were reduced from 12 to 3 times a year, which makes sense, you know, if it's a path being used. So great job there. Some of the paths have been decreased to 0. Do you know why some of those were reduced to 0?
I'm just trying to pull those areas up so I know exactly where. I'll come back to that if you don't mind.
Okay, that's fine. And then some of paths have been reduced to 3 times a year, but they're not paths anybody's ever going to walk on. So it's, I mean, I can see doing it once a year for fire, kind of weed abatement, safety stuff, but like, there's a path that goes from Via Del Monte to Via Somonte. It drops like 3 stories. I mean, you have to slide down there. I don't know how you guys are even going to do it, Sean, but it seems weird that we have these paths that don't exist, that nobody's ever going to walk on, and we're going to maintain them 3 times a year. So it seems like, I think great strides have been made on the paths. I think there's an opportunity to revisit some of these and say, is this a walking path, or is this a fire abatement once-a-year safety clearance? And look at that. And so, you know, that's just something I would suggest as you're kind of continuing to evolve this. And my understanding is that some of the paths that were listed, the prices were incorrect. I think that's what the email stated. And so I'm assuming those, like PT 91, 93, 102, that those costs will be updated in what comes to us next?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, those areas there was those 4 you identified in email, and then there was a total, I think, of 6.
Yeah, it was worth like $33,000 or something across them. So those will be, and then maybe if there could just be a little bit more fine-tuning of paths that nobody's ever going to walk on, and it all adds up. The other thing on the paths, and I don't know how council feels about this, so I walked a lot of these paths. I do a lot of walking in the city. And I would say that the majority of these paths, the work that Sean and that his guys and that Bats have to do is clearing encroaching vegetation from the neighboring properties. And so I don't know how to deal with that. It's either trees that are coming over, or it's things that people have planned